Hello, everyone. My name is Philippe, as you know. Welcome to a weekly show in which we talk to talented people and they have inspiring career journeys as well. Today, our guest is Matthew Espinoza. Matt is a lot of things: entrepreneur, founder, crypto enthusiast, um, YouTuber, podcaster. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but you'll tell us all about it in a bit. Also, I heard that you're in the process of creating the first tokenized book. Is that right?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So that's pretty
Fantastic.
exciting.
Uh, but yeah, I think you do a lot of stuff also regarding kind of learning and productivity and all of that, and sharing your journey with your community. But yeah, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to joining. I'm sure we have a lot of interesting topics that I want to ask you about today. I'll try to cover all of them. But yeah, before we dig in and I start asking you and bombarding you with questions, tell us, um, in your perspective, kind of who is Matt and kind of what you are working on now, and what was your journey until here, kind of the key milestones until this point.
Yeah, so much for having me on. I've been in the social token space for the last year and a half. I think I first kind of got introduced to it through I think this blog post talking about the basic concept of the idea of investing into people, and then more formally with BitCloud and the introduction of that. I worked with a couple of talents on BitCloud, and then I think there's a really eye opening to kind of see actual social, like a really social platform built on top of social tokens, which is kind of cool. So rather than just kind of thinking of it like just like a random token, you invest in a token. It's more like a community of pretty cool people and posting. And I think now since then, BitCloud's rebranded to DSO, and we got a back to DSO through a dev grant, which is awesome. And then we kind of been building out our platform. But I think one of the biggest problems and kind of the way that I actually started personally through the social token space is that we actually launched Agora on top of the BitCloud ecosystem. So we had our token. Our token's still there. We're one of the few verified accounts on DCell. And so I think what we ended up kind of starting is that I literally created a landing page in 5 hours. And it's kind of the story of how I kind of tell it. But I created a landing page in 5 hours explaining the problem of social tokens, the scalability problems, just kind of what I knew about social tokens. I kind of put it in a single landing page. And then within 72 hours of launching that on BitCloud, we reached 500,000 in market cap. And that was literally, we got around, I think in actual funds and usable funds, we had around 41K, which was amazing. And so we literally within 72 hours, not only were we able to get funding in a way, and from there actually build a startup to actually solve the problems around social tokens. And we definitely dive into like what I think some of those problems are, how I'm actually trying to solve it with my startup right now. Right now we're backed by DSO Octane, which is makes sense because we're built on top of their blockchain and kind of the people who made this all happen. And just recently, I just accepted like dropping out of university for 1 week, taking 1 week at a time, to as part of the Z Fellows program. So Z Fellows is just a program where you get mentored by some cool people like Naval from AngelList. You get Keith, who's CEO of Netflix. I'm starting that next week actually, which I'm pretty excited about. And yeah, that's kind of my journey.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of a lot of details that we'll go into now. But so starting from the beginning, um, when or do you remember kind of the moment where kind of was the inflection point for you regarding crypto and Web3? How or yeah, how did you start getting really into crypto and Web3? Was that the same moment where you social tokens, or were there two different moments?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. The way I kind of got into it personally, I think one of the best ways to kind of get into Web3 is just like investing into currencies. And so I was officially like I invested a little bit into Bit and a little bit into Dogecoin. Dogecoin is the real one that I started like getting super interested in for a little bit. But either way, I invested in both of them, and I was just kind of interested in different verticals. And so with Web3, you have NFTs, you have DAOs, you have social tokens, and then you have obviously just like currencies, and the one that I thought that was like really undervalued, and even today I think it's still very undervalued in terms of potential is Frid. was social tokens, and so I pretty much decided that NFTs and stuff like that super exciting as well. But I want to really like understand everything I can about social tokens, and then build obviously now a way to kind of solve the problems that some social token platforms have.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So you got social tokens from almost like an investor's perspective, and thinking it was uh, not valued according to its potential. That's
Yep.
it's interesting take. So, and why do you think social tokens are undervalued right now? Why do you think they will be a lot more valuable in the future?
Yeah, I think honestly it comes down to utility. I think there's a lot of interesting utility cases on tokens versus just NFTs. I think NFTs, for example, are really great for token getting content, where you can hold an NFT and you can pretty much like have access to a certain component, whether that's like a website, a blog, which is really cool. But I think what's really cool about like social tokens in particular is that now we're adding a completely new layer to that, where individuals can now, in a way, have their own currency. And I think that's like a really defining moment that I think a lot of people are really exploring. That now people, not only in a way have their own currency, that people can, let's say, buy products using their own currency, which I think a lot tokens have, social token markets haven't explored too much yet. But also that with currencies themselves, it's also tradable. And I think, at least for me, especially the user interviews we've had, it makes more sense to understand trading tokens of an individual than it does to like trade art. So I think it's for me, at least it just kind of makes sense that you're obviously trading tokens of an individual makes a lot more sense to how the scalability of Web3 and like the future of words I think is really heading.
Got it, got it. Yeah, going back to your timeline, so kind of you discovered you got interested with social tokens, and I think that overlap more or less with when kind of Big Cloud came out and all
Mhm.
the buzz around it. So first of all, what was kind of your initial reaction to BitCloud, and also how do you kind of see kind of the two sides? Of course, I mean at that time, people loving it, people hating it. So, what was your kind of initial reactions, and how do you see kind of what the impact BitCloud had culturally? And
Yeah, I'm very close with the DSO team. They're an amazing, innovative team. I remember when I first joined BitCloud, um, uh, I was a little bit obviously like my alarms are going off a little bit, just because of the initial marketing. The way to set it up, they had like 15,000 Twitter accounts, and they launched using those Twitter accounts. And then there was like a lot of controversy around that component. The actual platform itself was really interesting for me. I still think it's very, very innovative for what's been able to do. And then I remember the golden days in Big Cloud. Since then, the activity has been decreased slightly, unfortunately. But I remember the real glory days where it was not uncommon to see not only verified people who were on Twitter, let's say they're verified on Twitter, actually following you on BitCloud. And it was super easy to get in contact, a very like top level verified people. Like I had a talk with Logan Paul. Like I can't and I was literally like, back then, like no one knew me, but I messaged Logan Paul on BitCloud, and he responded. And there's a lot of other really great examples where you have very top level verified people. They're commenting, they're posting, and when the engagement was the highest in BitCloud, is one of the most interesting moments ever. When you had such talented, verified people, very knowledgeable people, actually explaining some really top concepts, and then obviously having the ability to message those individuals as well was super easy because there's not a lot of people on the platform to begin with, versus Twitter where you have like thousands and thousands of followers, and it's hard to get a hold of someone. They seem to be super open, especially if you have already invested into them. So I have a couple of great examples where I know people who invested into Gary Tan and when he launched his token on BitCloud, and now they're very close friends with Gary Tan just because there's that initial momentum there, right? So I think doing that way has been super interesting. I think that was like, especially then, it was super interesting for me.
yeah, not only of course being first and being a small network in the beginning counts, but also I think that's one of the powerful things about social tokens. They can actually see how, um, yeah, how engaged or how people are willing to talk with them. So they can actually see how much tokens they have, so they can kind of prioritize who to answer first.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's kind of a way of getting and have different kind of tiers of fans, a kind of audience.
Yeah.
So yeah, you enter Big Cloud. Tell me a little bit more about the story you were explaining first. That how do you got to 500K in market cap in 72 hours? So you started. You said you started landing page and explaining what you know and what you learned about social tokens.
Yeah, that's right. So, I created this initial landing page of just kind of the problems I found within Web3 around social tokens. And then I kind of hosted it on BitCloud. Back then we were called BitPerks. Now we're called Agora Labs. Just we did a rebrand in the beginning of the year. But back then when we were called BitPerks, we had a token there. And just by promoting it to a couple different Discord servers around Web3, we're like, hey, just launch a token on BitCloud. Check it out. Here's a landing page. And in comparison to most, I guess like big cloud accounts, because it's still very early days, there's a lot of trading going on. Like the website is super optimized, looks really nice. And on top of that, there is actual utility. Because in our bio, we said if you held one of our tokens, that means you'd actually get early access to the platform before anyone else. And so that like automatically provided incentives. Of, okay, like I need to buy enough of this token to then actually get, I guess it gets the reward. And I think that a token, just one token, if you were to buy it when it's at zero, obviously we're zero. I think the highest we ended up reaching was like 3,000 per token, like 3,300 per token. And so started getting a little ridiculous in prices. But regardless, it was like super great. And then obviously, BitCloud has a FR rate, so they have a founder rate. And so if someone invests, let's say $100 and my founder rate is 10%, then the token will get 10% of whatever that setup is, which is pretty cool.
And what was, I mean, just for context, uh where were you? What were you doing before all of this happened?
Hmm.
And yeah, where were you? Kind of give me the broader context of where where you were and what was this kind of in kind of your life career timeline.
Yeah, literally this time last year, I was a struggling ed tech founder. Embarrassingly, I was trying to create kind of similar to Skillshare, just like but more premium. And I had a couple of different users that were on our platform, nothing too insane. It's like super difficult to scale. But obviously, I think, and I said this before on a couple of different interviews. I think everyone at one point should either join a startup or like be a founder because I think there's something to be said about one, the culture, but two, like the kind of like work, it's the grind, or even like the work, the way the work's set. Right? I think if you work in a huge big company, you have very little say and very little incentive in like what the direction of an area is going to go. But when you're starting a company or even working at a small company, like the culture's there in the beginning. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well when you with your startups as well. And that's been super important, I find. But like I said, I just struggling at tech founder this time last year, and then obviously went into social tokens and then built the company from it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that it's definitely a uh, experience, kind of a life experience where you learn a lot, and also I think because especially in Web3, this is more true than ever. So there's no kind of formula, or there's no path to follow. So it's you don't know what you should do next. You need to discover for yourself, and you need to make mistakes and try things. And that's, I think, an interesting thing to ask you. So how would you compare the struggles and the journey of being a Web2 startup founder like you were a year ago, and to being a Web3 startup founder now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that I think we've noticed is that with Web 2, there's like little to no education. So, for example, if you're building a pet company and let's say your startup is like adding tag like pets, collars, everyone kind of understands that concept. And the second you say you're building a social token platform, literally anything in Web3, like I'm building an NFT marketplace, like you have to go to that initial hurdle of like, what's an NFT? And then you have to explain why it even makes sense. You have to explain how an NFT works. And so like there's like a huge learning curve, and then there's like the actual users. And so I find it's been a little bit more difficult to get users, but I think the users we do have are a lot more. It's interesting because the users we do have are a lot more passionate than if we were to do it in a Web 2 way. They love the product, they love what we're doing. And so I think also that has to say because social tokens it's a very much incentive based idea. But what I guess like Web 2 is easy to onboard. Like you have fairly knowledge about anything. Web 3 is a little bit of education has to come into it. And then it becomes exponential depending on how difficult of a topic you're tackling.
Yeah, yeah, they makes sense. I think this might be an interesting kind of topic to explore a little bit further. Kind of your um learnings and your because I mean just by you're still young, but just by looking at your LinkedIn profile, there's different things you did, kind of things,
Yeah,
projects you started, other projects you're involved. So, um, uh, how would you first of all how would you organize all of what you've been involved in? So, of course, you're a founder. You had that at Tech Startup, and now you have Agora Labs. What else? What else do you spend
yeah.
time and energy on?
Yeah, I recently got hired by this Forbes 30 under 30 company where like so the actual company they have like a subsidiary. It's called Curious Cardinals, and every single Friday there's a group of like 20 high schoolers, like grade 9 to grade 12, that teach everything about Web3. And it's probably one of the best parts of my week. Literally every Friday from 4 to 6. There's like around just, like, a little less than 2 hours actually. It's like actually 4 to like 5:50, and it's a good group of like 20, 25 high schoolers who want to know about Web3. The actual company sources everyone, so they source like the actual students, and all I have to do is go there and then talk about a topic. Last week we talked about social tokens. Actually, it was actually one of the
Mhm.
best things, and I had all those 25 in 2 hours. I had all those 25 individuals actually launch their own currency, and then they're showing their parents like, "Yo, like I actually have my own currency," and they're like, they're like maybe like 15, right? It's just like so cool. They're showing their parents. They're showing like, oh, people are actually trading. And I bought actually $20 of each of those tokens, just to kind of support them. Like, hey, I'm an early supporter. And that's been an amazing experience. Just kind of see like a very young perspective. And I think obviously the young people are going to be the people that kind of revolutionize the space. I think Web3 is built with like the young Gen Z founders. And so educating them early is just going to be beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And just out of curiosity, I think maybe people listening to this are not as familiar with social tokens as we are, and sometimes we might get a little bit too technical. Sorry about that. But how did you kind of explain social tokens to that group of
Mm.
25-year old I don't know, like, high school students? I mean, it's probably easier to explain them to explain your parents, but tell us kind of your initial definition of what the social token is.
Yeah, I just kind of gave. I like when I explain definitions. Like on any topic really. I like kind of asking a question and kind of posing a question first, and then kind of diving into like, well, this is what it is. And so like the question I always normally ask is like who's your favorite like an artist, celebrity? And so we get a couple different names. Right? You got like Cardi B or Barack Obama, like any like top celebrity. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then I ask them like how long have you known about them? And so let's say it's like Cardi B, right? I know someone's like Cardi B in my session last Friday. And she's like, "Oh, I've known about Cardi B for like 4 years." I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And I'm like, "How many followers did she have?" So then I ask like, "Has your follower rate grown since like 3 years?" She's like, "Yeah, of course it has, Matt." I'm like, "Okay, well, imagine if you knew that she was becoming success, or like even like a Billie Eilish, right? If you knew she's going to become super successful, if you had the ability to take part in that, invest in her early, where she would obviously get the incentive of some early backing that would obviously progress her even further faster. And number two, you would have be part of her journey. Like you would technically be an investor of who she is, and obviously have that a closer relationship because now she knows who the biggest fan is. It's like and they're like, yeah, that's amazing. I would definitely do that. And initially, sometimes they actually think like they have to pay a lot, like say like I don't know, like $1,000, or even like to a 15-year-old, $100 is a lot. But so they think it's a lot they have to pay. But I'm telling them like it could even be like $1, it could be even $10 if you can know that you're obviously progressing them, but also you have the upside of whatever they do. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the way I get to them, the basic concept.
Yeah, that's a great way of doing it. So even a more engaging way of explaining it with a story in the use case.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just speaking of that, I remember using the same analogy with a musician, but going even more in the beginning. So kind of
Mm.
you're friends with the band, and you're the ones kind of giving them a ride to shows. You let them crash in your couch, and then they eventually become famous. And of course, you're their friends, and they will be grateful. But imagine if you're the first ones to buy their token before they were famous. And then
Oh, that's a good
even
one too.
so, yeah, you can even go back to kind of investing in your friends and your musician friends. And the other day I spoke with we actually had Ed Sheeran sleep in his couch. So it was
Oh,
actually
wow.
it was actually the true kind of real life personification of the story I was telling. Uh, but yeah, it's a great way of explaining it. And but you were mentioning that you bought some of your students' tokens. How do you think that will kind of affect or change your relationship with them?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question. I think right now, like honestly, it's kind of motivated me more to like follow their journey a little bit actually. So it's something I was literally thinking about right after I ended the call last Friday. I'm like I'm like I really wonder like where they're gonna go. Like they're learning about Web3 at such a young age. Like and out of 25 students, like there's some builders, just some people who are interested in marketing, technically, I just needed one of these. And I didn't think of it at the time. I did $20 just to kind of support them. I didn't really think like, okay, I want to make a return. But I'm like, you know what? If there's any way I could support them, I'm already an investor technically into their token, and assuming they're going to continue, even if you don't. Like, hey, um, just like knowing that I'm literally literally a part of their journey, which is kind of insane to think about. And so I think literally in the session I'm going to have in 2 days with them, because it's every Friday. I'm gonna ask like, hey, like, where do you guys want to go? Like, what do you guys want to see like doing Web3? Can I connect you with like a startup that can get you like early experience, right? Now I'm thinking about that kind of stuff. Or before I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just thinking, hey, let's teach these kids really cool ideas. Now I'm thinking like, can I get them fully exposed into Web3 as like a natural position in the startup, or kind of building their network from there?
Yeah, yeah. I was asking you because I felt the same. So that's kind of also one of the
Yeah.
use cases behind Talent Protocol. I used to do mentorship mostly with startup founders and kind of early stage
Hmm.
startup, and I also always felt that way. So it is a very kind of engaging and meaningful and kind of hour session that I always enjoy, but it's easy to then completely
Like,
lose touch and contact with them because I have other things to think about, of course. And I always thought if they ended the session giving me one of their tokens, so here's one of my personal tokens as a thank you for giving me this 1 hour mentorship session. I would probably be much more willing to kind of follow up on them and check up on them and help them and yeah, would actually be beneficial to me because I like that mentorship role. So yeah,
yeah.
that's why I was curious because I think they could have a really big impact and more than just the financial upside, also that kind of emotional side of feeling part of someone's journey. And also, I'm sure, for example, for that group of students, like in 10 years' time, maybe one of them will be super successful, and you're like, "Oh, actually, I'm one of their tokens from early on." Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, moving on a bit. Tell us a little bit more about Agora Labs now. So, kind of this evolved, or so, or getting back to where we were. You started this landing page talking about problems with social tokens that eventually became Bitperks, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
maybe the Bitperks were and what Agora Labs is now.
Yeah, for sure. So BitPerks at the time was more just a rewards platform, hence like the name BitPerks. And so essentially what we did is we took tokens that were built specifically on DSO, on the DSO blockchain, and we just kind of added like a real utility on top of it. Because one of the main problems I listed in the landing page was that at least on the diesel blockchain, there's a couple other social token platforms. You guys are doing it really well, where you actually show the actual reward and roadmap. But most social token platforms don't think about the long term utility of the reward. And even if they do, for example, Rally, they have, which is a social token platform, they have like in the bottom, like, okay, here's the rewards if you actually hold this token, which is great. But there's no actual link and there's a direct like setup, if that makes sense. Where, for example, let's say, for example, we built like a Discord bot that linked up social tokens from Visa to Discord. You'd have to sign in, and automatically, depending on how much of a token you owned, you would actually get a roll automatically. And if you were to leave that amount, you would lose that amount. Similar to what Collabland does with NFTs, they built that for social tokens. With like, whereas in Rally, it was just kind of saying like, "Hey, join the Discord," and we'll kind of manually assign that role. We were doing it automatically, and then now we're experimenting with airdrops, where individuals, like social media people, they all they have to do is set up like the initial workflow for how an airdrop would work, and it's like don't even have to worry about it. They don't even have to automatically send this address to this address, or this this amount to this person, or I'm going to accidentally send a little bit too more, or send accidentally too less. And so we have all that kind of figured out in the back end, where we're hosting on right now at DSO. We're going to be expanding to Rally actually in the next couple of weeks, where those individuals who have tokens on those platforms can actually have management of what the rewards and utility actually are. We've seen a couple interesting use cases actually, with you just using those kind of ideas.
So yeah, so you changed the name from Bitperks to Agora, just should
Oh
not
yeah,
be tied to should not be tied to
yeah.
BitCloud.
Yeah. Well, I think also like not even to be tied to like a single bit perks. We're so focused on the actual perks. With Agora, if you look at names like Google, Stripe, they're not tied to like a single, like Stripe's not called like payment processor, right? So we wanted the name that was like kind of universal. And Agora just kind of worked out really nicely because it also means Greek sorry, it also means
Yeah.
assembly in Greek, which is pretty cool. The kind of way we're kind of explaining it is that we're assembling Web3 creators. And so Agora Labs is just kind of building different ideas like a Discord bot, a
Hmm.
automation airdrop to then make this all possible.
So just to make it simple and clear, your
Right.
focus is helping kind of content creators and their engaging with their communities. So and giving more utility, more ways for them to utilize their token, for their fans to use their token. And you're
Yeah.
focusing on mostly creators or other kinds of communities.
Yeah, mostly creators, I would say. We
Okay.
haven't really explored the realm of DAOs, but I
Hmm.
think Diesel actually recently added the feature to make DAOs, which is pretty cool. But no, we've mostly been focusing on social tokens.
This podcast is sponsored by Talent Protocol, the Web3 professional network where anyone can invest in high potential talent.
I also saw that you're launching or creating a Web3 creator accelerator program. Is,
Yep.
is this the right name? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that because I'm interested in exploring a little bit this intersection between content creators, Web3 tokens, and how to onboard them, how to educate them, like you're saying. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Web3 accelerator program is going to be 3 weeks. Any creator can actually launch a token. So we actually teach them the process of how to actually launch. Because I think one thing we've also noticed is that it's one thing to create a token, it's something entirely to actually launch a token. And I think a lot of people, especially tokens, I could really only launch once. At least from what we've noticed from what we've been able to do, it's very difficult to continue launching as successfully as the first time. So the first time you're able to make, it's kind of like a Kickstarter, right? Like if you think of it, even like in webs, if you do a Kickstarter, like I say the first week where you do a really big push, you're probably gonna get a lot more than the middle week, right? And obviously in the ending, you probably get a little bit more than that. But regardless, I think it's super important to launch. It's not just important just to have a token. And so in the first week, how a token works, and then by the end of the 3 weeks, they would have their token launched. They would have utility, which is super important. It would just be a token that's launched that has no utility. They're gonna rug pull everyone. We talk about long term utility. We talk about the roadmap they're gonna set up, and then we connect them with investors who do want to invest in social tokens in particular. So then you can actually get that initial capital. In the long term, we hope that this can be the way, kind of similar to what BuildSpace is doing with developers, where they're bringing Web 2 Developer 3. We hope that this accelerator program, what we're going to do, we want to do it for March to like mid-April, and then reevaluate until, and then May, depending on how well the first batch goes. It's going to be a very continuous batch in which we're continuously bringing people and creators to the Web3 ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So, I mean, sounds exactly the kind of initiative that we all in Web3 need more of. So you're having a cohort and doing this, yeah, this pilot, and then seeing where that goes.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you do also have kind of some experience as a content creator, right? So you can
Yeah.
understand what the pains and struggles are. What would you say is like the first of all, I think two things. So how social tokens in Web3 can really help and benefit a content creator. So what changes, what do they have to gain by doing the jump? And also what are the common kind of obstacles and struggles to kind of to making that jump as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like one of the biggest things, I don't know if you've had this as well, but like a lot of people are like, what are the difference between, let's say, like Patreon versus like what you guys are doing, or like, what social tokens are. And I think like the biggest way, and like maybe the best way, or like one of the ways to kind of explain it is that with Patreon, you're kind of like buying into, not you're not buying, you're buying into like the reward, which I don't think is the best way to look into it. I think you should into like who they are as a person, and secondarily, you should get a reward for doing activity, like a reward for like there's exclusive content on Patreon and stuff like that. So I think that should be the model where it invest first, the reward second, versus reward first, and then like you have to continue feeding me rewards for me to stay. And if if you don't feed me rewards like exclusive content every single day, I'm just gonna unfollow you, right? So I think having the invested mindset first, it's like such a big difference. I would say it's something we've noticed as well. And then I think the second thing, you just kind of add on to that, is with social tokens, you could obviously do airdrops of tokens as well, which is really cool. It's something you can't even do in Web two. Because what you can do is you can then have, even like, let's say, kind of similar to what down centers are doing, where you have to do this task and we'll give you a certain amount of tokens for this task. And so now you're kind of completely flip the model, where instead of funding it in like say creator subscriptions, now you have the ability for a creator to then say, hey, I'm looking for an editor. And because you guys have been here for my journey since day one, I want to actually pay you in my own token, which I technically have the supply of, to be able to do this. And obviously, depending on how well you edit my videos or how well you work with me, um, the upside is technically limitless. And so that's something where we've actually noticed as well with our platform, where that example is actually like a very is one example we actually do have in our platform. We have a YouTuber, and he's literally paying an editor, like one of his top fans, who edits videos very well, to be part of his journey.
Yeah, really good example. Uh, Usually, how I describe kind of the difference is that although Patreon, of course, is super useful and will continue to be useful, is that the change in mindset. So Patreon is still like a transactional model. So you're paying
Mm.
and getting something back on a monthly basis, and if you stop getting value from that, you stop paying for it. And if you stop paying for it, of course, your relationship is over. And I think the token is
Right.
much more that ownership model. So like you said, you're investing in the people, not the rewards. So by buying the token, you're part of their journey. But I think what you added is super relevant. So it actually allows you to flip the model, and people actually feel not only like they are partial owners of that project that creates content, but they can actually join and help and get an upside on it. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting.
I'm very curious, especially on your perspective, how
Yeah.
you've kind of seen, like, I think one of the interesting things about Patreon or any like, like that model, right, where it's like transactional, is that it's very reliable on terms you're going to make the next
Yeah.
month, versus social tokens, where it's like you make a lot of money from a launch, but then it's it's very inconsistent. Like, how have you kind of dealt with that? Is that even something you're considering? Because with Kickstarter, you don't think about, I need to make this amount a month every single month, are you looking at tokens like more of a Kickstarter model, or are you looking at
Uh,
more of like a Patreon model?
um, Neither actually. No. So, well, of course, first of all, we're focusing on kind of knowledge workers, builders. So much more kind of the
Mhm.
LinkedIn user, not the Patreon user. So kind of founders, engineers, designers, developers, builders. And the core distinction between them, this type of builders and content creators, is that these builders have job and then income coming from their job, and kind of the social token is a way to build this support network surrounding their career. So having these people that will support them achieve their goals in their job. So they are not looking for this is not kind of their main income stream, and that's why our model is much more actually in our model. There's not a big, like you're saying, a big people don't get a lot of money in the, I mean, they might have a lot of money at the beginning, of course, if they get a lot of investors. Most invested to buy the tokens is still locked in the smart contract, so it's much more a staking mechanism of people staking money to signal how much they believe in someone. So that's the use case. But of course, in not only to for us to be more, also integrate people like content creators who are looking to make uh, a career and a main income from another source, and also for in because in some cases in these professions people still need funding for something. They might need to do coding bootcamp. They might need to relocate to Silicon Valley to always start their startup. So they might need money, and that's why we're adding in the future kind of using NFTs for that. So using NFTs almost like a Kickstarter model on top of the social token. So I have my social token, my token holders, and I can launch an NFT tied to a specific career goal. So, for example, I want to start my own company in three years, and for that, I'm moving to Silicon Valley. That's why I created this NFT. So this way, your career goal is actually recorded on chain, makes you more accountable towards it. And NFTs are actually a much more efficient way to fundraise. And but they are still tied. They can still be tied to your social token. So, for example, you can state that only people with a certain amount of your tokens will be able to buy the NFT. Also, the NFT doesn't need to only have like collectible emotional value. Can tie some utility to it. So, for example, people that buy this NFT, it can be a one of one or like a fractionalized one of 10. People who hold it could, for example, have 20% discount on your pre-seed round when you start your company. So this is how we are thinking of adding kind of this feature, this layer of fundraising when people actually, a lot of people don't beat it. I think in this model where most of the money is actually locked, it's staked and not being used by the talent. Actually, it's less risky for scams and for rug pulls, and it's much more about building, showing how much you believe in something and create in someone, and creating this relationship and this support network and this, like you're saying, this multiplayer, seeing careers as multiplayer journeys and not just everyone for himself.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of our model. But yeah, sorry for the detour, but going back to content creators. So, and what kind of content creators do you think are kind of the low hanging fruit? So, which types do you think will benefit more from Web3 and the social token now? Because now, of course, social tokens don't have that much of infrastructure or educational content yet. So who do you think are the ones that can benefit more from it right? Or also another way of looking at this question is which ones are you focusing on, Agora?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, primarily our users have been creators who already have tokens, either on Rally or BitCloud. And then obviously with the accelerator program, we're actually focusing on people who never built a token at all, and then building the token with them and kind of holding their hand along the journey. But I think what we've actually noticed is that the best conversion, at least from Web 2 to Web 3, has been like people who understand or are trying to get away from Patreon. I think people are starting to notice that Patreon's fees are ridiculously high. And I think the other big problem that I think I haven't mentioned to Patreon is that let's say you're a YouTube creator, right? You're a YouTube creator, you're posting content every single week on YouTube. But then to make your Patreon people happy, you also have to post maybe an extra snippet that takes an extra maybe 30 minutes of maybe 30 to like maybe 3 hours every single week for you to do. But the social tokens and the way that our platform is set up is that you don't have to you don't have to continuously post exclusive content. Kind of like you mentioned, the transactional fee behind it. You don't have to do that because the token has the value itself. And so what we've noticed is that it's a Patreon creator, like someone in Web 2, is already making money, is then able to convert their people who are on Patreon, or even just like have, and not even necessarily convert. I think just being able to convert completely to social tokens. But I think what we've also noticed as well is that even just like having the option to say that you can either do Patreon or you can do social tokens, and having both of them kind of together, and then seeing which one kind of balance it out at the end. Whether that subscription model is like, more reliable for you in terms of like getting monetary value every single month. Or do you want to have, like some like small fundraising components and like, get some fans, get some incentives. And then obviously the idea of like airdropping is really cool. I think they're trying to experiment with a lot of really great use cases. The video editor being one. There's like different examples. Like if you connect me to someone else that in your network, I can set up a call with them. Let's say a founder, investor. We'll give you some airdrop tokens for that. So I think there's a lot of different use cases for airdrops that I think a lot of Patreon people are looking into. But I think those have been the easiest to kind of convert to this world.
Makes sense. So we're kind of approaching the last bit of our chat, and folks, maybe kind of almost like a thought exercise. So you don't have a personal token, do you, or do you already have one?
Yeah, I have my own token on DSO, and
Yeah.
then I'm looking to actually, I'd like to be able to set my token on Talent Protocol. I have an account, I just haven't set up the token component. I have to look into that a lot more. But yeah,
Yeah, but let's assume or that you have or think about the one on this. So it's much more thinking about talking about some things about you through the lens of a token. So I think you're pretty kind of big fan of kind of learning and kind of sharing your learnings and your achievements in public. I think also your failures, right?
yeah.
Not only sharing your so. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, about your approach of sharing all of this journey, these learnings, the successes and the failures publicly, and how would that intersect with the fact that you have a token. So imagine you have a token, you have your token holders. So because I mean it does connect, I think, or seeing a future where more people have tokens, probably their token holders would appreciate this kind of transparency that you already have. But tell
Yeah.
us not only why you do it, why do you share so much about your decisions, your successes, your failures, why you do it, how, and yeah, how has been the
Yeah.
experience, what you learned by doing it, and what are the also probably the flip sides or the dark sides of being so public about them.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. What's nice about being public about everything, so like most of my accomplishments, also my failures, and I've had a fair share of both of those. I do like sharing publicly, just because I find that there's a lot of serendipitous moments where if I share something, then I get connected to someone. Today I shared, although it's been official for a couple weeks, that I've been accepted to Z Fellows as the youngest person in the crypto cohort. It's like 10 different companies and 10 individuals kind of representing the cohort's like a 10K investment at $1 billion valuation cap. So I shared that online on Twitter. And just from that one tweet, I was able to get connected to like 5 really amazing founders who previously done like moving north into Y Combinator, and also are looking to applying into Z Fellows. And so they gave them insight on the interview process and help me in any way. And so and then one of them is actually looking to just angel invest because he's been looking to invest in a Web3 startup. So it's just that that one moment created 5 really cool connections. There's a lot of examples like that where by sharing something in public, sharing my learnings in public every single month. I do a newsletter sharing what I'm up to, and now it's up to 1.3K followers. And I never growth hacked the newsletter. It just it started off with like maybe 200 of my close friends, and then at the end of the newsletter, I have like, hey, if you enjoyed it, share it with a friend. And then like 200 shared it with a couple other friends, and now it's 1.3K, which is super cool. So literally every single month, over 1,000 people are reading my updates on what I'm up to. And then I get some really cool emails. I always say like reply if you can help in any way, or if I can help you in any way. And I've been able to really build not only my network, but I think there's really cool connections through that. I think the main downside I think has just been, I think every once in a while you do get like the occasional negative comment, but it's not like nothing too insane. I think the other like main negative component is that with your whole life kind of being public, that I think a lot of people expect a lot of things from you, and if you don't achieve what they expect, they get disappointed. And like it's kind of weird because like, at some level you have to live up to like your own expectations, but then because everything's so public, you also have to live up to other people's expectations. Like if you were to, which is good, it's also bad because like for example, if you were to show online like, hey, I'm gonna lose let's see 20 pounds in like 6 months, or whatever, and you're gonna continue showing that publicly, you might move towards your goal, but obviously, and sometimes it might be unhealthy that you're doing it so fast, for example. And the same thing in startups or like sharing like things that everything online is that you have to just push it to kind of get there faster, but sometimes like at what cost? So that's something to consider as well. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think the positive is upside versus like downside.
Yeah, I think it's similar thing that happens with social tokens. So being public, so it makes you more accountable. It probably makes you work harder, makes you more likely to reach your goals. But
Yeah.
also, if you do not reach them, it makes the failure kind of yeah, more public, obviously. But yeah, you feel it more as a big thing, as a failure than you would if it was just you.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
and that's actually an interesting point, which is if you do have a token, and would you still be as transparent regarding failures? So in that case, if you have
Hmm.
a token that's tradable, being so public about failures could be
It's negative.
yeah, it could be
Yeah.
a trigger for people to uh, sell your token. I mean, it is kind of a provocation, of course, but about that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think it's kind of the same way, right? Like, with like startups, right? I'm sure you do this as well. If you're investors, like monthly updates. And I think you kind of have to show like a certain side. Like you don't show every single failure. Like, okay, this thing couldn't be deployed. It was like a day later. You don't show that kind of stuff. But I think obviously you show like the bugs and how like how they can be fixed. So I think in the same way you would kind of set up a startup and kind of share with your investors, and typically token holders are in a way investors of your platform. In the same way you kind of be transparent about that with a token holder.
Yeah, of course. I just provoking you, but of course, I'm of the same opinion that transparency is always better. And if you set the expectations right and always being transparent upfront, will actually win you probably more investors and token holders. Uh,
Sure.
of course, I mean, you can admit and talk about your failures, but it's how you do it, not what you say that's important. So if you say, okay, I failed because of this, and I really understood why I failed, and this is what I'll do to for this to not happen again. I think that's probably more valuable.
Hmm.
Just someone that so actually how you deal with failure tells more about the kind of person that you are than actually yeah, just someone that posts successful stories and updates.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, also thinking of this as like I said, like a multiplayer, like a shared journey.
Mhm.
So these are actually the bonding moments. So that when there's struggles and obstacles, so maybe when actually when your supporters can jump in and give you advice and help you, and this will make your relationship much deeper than just someone that's watching someone crush it.
Yeah.
So they probably feel more valuable. So, and kind of following up to this, so this idea of both of you writing public and having your those 1,300 people reading your newsletter or people holding your token is different ways of maintaining a support network. So you a social token might help you kind of build this support network, but not necessarily maintain it. If you use the token, that's what you're building in Agora Labs. The question is, what other things do you do to kind of maintain your support network engaged besides that monthly newsletter you write?
So support network in terms of like token holders, or support network in terms of like
Yeah,
people?
generally. So kind of people that
Okay.
are interested in what you're doing, interested in your career, and that want to follow that journey and support you.
Oh, okay. That's a good question. I actually have like this little like Web3 Discord server of a couple like plus people. And there's like a one channel for like progress. And so everyone in the server actually just sends progress updates every day. And like I there's like a little like bot that reminds you to send the progress update. And so literally the newsletter is more of an overview, but to the day, everyone knows what I'm up to in a single day. So yeah, I kind of share like what I'm doing today and then what I'm doing tomorrow. And everyone kind of knows, which is kind of, I guess in a kind of way, it's kind of scary when you say it out loud, but it's been kind of cool because I see everyone else's progress updates as well.
Yeah, I think that might be an interesting model as well. So not only having this kind of relationship between almost like talent and supporters, which is one person in the spotlight and the other ones following and helping, but also this kind of group or people that support each other. But all of them have their own goals, so kind of accountability
Uh-huh.
buddies almost.
Yeah.
It's also an interesting idea, and of course, it can all be kind of token holders from each other, kind of doing token swaps. I'll get some of yours, get some of mine, and then we'll be buddies. But yeah, but it's an
Yeah.
interesting way of looking at the dynamic because I mean most people supporting and buying tokens probably will have their own tokens and have their own supporters. So this is not
Mhm.
very like um, very structured organized where people are either talent or supporters. They're probably both in different cases.
Yeah. I agree.
Uh I think last question that I have for you is just for we talked about so many projects, so many stuff that you do. Um maybe tell us where we can find you, or where can people reach out to you, where can they follow you, and what's the best way to reach you or to know what you're up to.
Yeah, for sure. So luckily we're on Twitter. So you just Matt Espos, so Metespos. And it's a Twitter handle and also like my handle for pretty much any social media. And I open, so you can shoot me a DM. And if you actually go on Twitter, I don't know if it's on website. Someone has to correct me on this, but I know on mobile you can easily see the newsletter, and it's actually
Yeah.
attached to my Twitter. And so you can just click subscribe, and then you can obviously get subscribed. And I send mostly monthly updates about any Web3 stuff I'm looking into, or stuff like that with a group of cool individuals.
Okay. Cool. I mean, look, that's perfect answer. So Twitter is the door to everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Matt, for sharing all of this about you, your perspective on stuff, and yeah, I'm excited to know what you're doing next and what Agora will turn out to be. And yeah, speak again soon. Maybe we'll do another episode. After you have a lot of token holders and have much more real life experience on how to deal with token holders in your own social token.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you again for coming and see you around. And also thank you, guys, for listening. And see you next week.
If today's episode inspired you, don't forget to follow us on your podcast app to never miss upcoming interviews. Also, if you would like to share your journey with us, you know any hidden talent, or you just want to keep in touch with us, you can find our email in the description.